Hey guys, Mustached here to review the movie Hoppers. So, apologies for the late review on this one, but there was a lot of Let's Plays going on, and there's still a lot of Let's Plays going on, and a lot of plans, so I do apologize for the month plus delay, but here we are. Hoppers. So I did see the trailer for this movie, and it definitely appeared a bit different from what I ended up taking out of the movie. I very much was in the vein of, when I at least was initially seeing the trailer, very sort of in the vein of a Good Dinosaur type of movie. That's not even remotely near what this movie is, but I digress. I decided, obviously, to check this movie out, also because, I think it's important to check out when Disney/Pixar actually decide to do something original instead of another remake. Point being, I'm pretty sure if I were to check, there are certain reviewers who didn't even review this movie. Interesting. But they will cry and complain when there's another remake or whatever, but I'm here to review this movie too, as objectively as possible, of course, but I digress. So, with that all out of the way, let's get into it. So the movie starts with a young girl named Mabel, who is very keen on helping animals. She sees all the pet animals in the school, which, just to break review already, of real talk of, I've never understood school animals, or pet animals in school. None of the schools I ever went to had something like that. We never saw the purpose of it, I guess, where I come from. But, so that's a thing that is completely, foreign to me. Very different, cultural expression going on here. Anyway, so I don't know where this movie takes place, is what I'm trying to get at. In terms of, I don't think they ever give the place a name, or unless it's some fantasy location. Anyway, point being is that she gets caught in the process, and the animals are brought back. And this is even her first time doing stuff like this. This is we get some exposition here about how she's done it before. So she's left with her grandma. But of course, as we cut through a timeline of her hanging with her grandma and cutting to a present day through this little mini short montage, of course, with this being a Disney movie, we have now in this case, a grandparent passing away, because of course. So, she is of the age of going to college, though the way she's drawn, I would say that never really comes across. She seems like a teenager more so than a high schooler/college student. Again, just saying. But anyway. So, Mabel interrupts a class, now that she is all grown up, when she learns that the mayor, named Jerry, wants to create a highway past this forest area. So she's not keen on that idea. But she learns that if there is a single beaver in this dam, then it will be considered a protected, beavers are the protected animal of this location. I almost think this is Canada or something. Beavers feel very Canadian coded. I don't know. Is that wrong to say? I don't think I've ever seen a beaver in my life. But, I digress again. Anyway, there is that weird theory, right? Because, Disney Pixar, right? There's that Disney theory of, like, every Disney movie being connected, and I was, like, thinking of, like, right, there's that, Turning Red movie, which is, like, a more symbolic turning into an animal type movie. So this is a different animal turning into animal type of movie, but interesting. I also think this movie is a secret prequel to the movie Up, where they already created a dog communicator, but we'll get to that later. Or, like, at least, provocating that potential tech in the future. Anyway. So, we learned that there are these robot beavers slash other animals that are, well, robots. And they can use these robots to commune with animals. That's right, we have technology that can turn humans into animals. I don't know if we can get more furry than this. Well, except Zootopia. But, in terms of, like, a person becoming an animal, I would wager that is insanely close. But this movie has an odd moment, probably the oddest in the movie, where there's dialogue mentioning the movie Avatar, unironically, which last time I checked isn't a Disney movie. Is the James Cameron the company, like, is that under the umbrella of Disney at this point? Like, I don't know. Disney is a mega conglomerate, so I don't know how much fucking shit Disney owns these days. I just assume that Disney owns pretty much close to everything in animation. So, again, I could be wrong, but I digress. So yes, our main character literally becomes a robot beaver that can now commune with other animals. But she is quickly snapped up by an owl, but quickly plunders back to the ground. She ends up in a pond, slightly askewed from the location that she was at, where she learns of pond rules. And pond rules are as such. They sort of inhabit one of the animal kingdom rules of if the animals, gotta get ready to get eaten and needs to eat, the eater can just eat the one that, if the eaten gets caught, then that's that, essentially. But also there's a conflicting rule that says that animals need to look out for one another, so, I don't know. This is all presented by the King Beaver character. And they have perhaps this movie's more risky joke, I would argue. The beaver in question is a guy beaver. And based on what he's saying and being a king and all this, and some of his later dialogue seems to suggest that he's an older beaver. She is just barely in college, and a human, albeit. And yes, it did come across of the thing of mating, that this is the joke. Yes. So, yeah, that's a thing that happens in this movie. Just wanted to point that out, just in case. Again, college-oriented, I don't know what her exact age is, but there's, layers of, going on there. Anyway. So, obviously, she wants to return the animals to the glade. Not the pond, the glade. But she sees that all the other animals get skittish around a certain point. They hear a noise that she does not hear, and figures out that it's a fake tree with a sound device that only seems to pull or push the animals away. Which, I don't know, there's already tech for that work in real life that works for dogs, so I guess that in this world they just figured out how to do that to other animals. I don't know. Again, we're getting a little technological here. Anyway, so they cut down the tree, and you think, oh, that's the end of the movie. Well, that is where things get exponentially crazier from this point moving forward, actually, quite frankly. So we learn some more exposition from the human side. This highway that, is being constructed is there purely to save 4 minutes of drive time. Yeah, that does not sound like a lot of time, but, humans be humans, and we do be wanting shortcuts in life. That's why we abbreviate the shit out of stuff, and that's why we have multitude of real highways in real life. So, yeah, that is what it be. But of course, there is the other aspect of wanting to preserve animal life, and there are humans who advocate for such things. So there is a delicate balance that is ever so shifting by the day, and the months, and the years, and so on and so forth. Anywho, Mabel accepts the job of being the mayor's, or the king, rather, their paw royal thing. I don't know. It's unwedding wedding or something along those lines. It's more like an advisor role that she takes on. So they pull in the animal kings and queens from the other types of kingdoms. So you get your frogs, you get your snakes, you get your bugs, through the butterfly, the beaver is the mammal one. And so Mabel is initially trying to push for just trying to scare them away. But the rest of the animals come to the conclusion that the best way is to squish, that's code for kill, because Disney is still not allowed to say the word kill these days, I guess, but, to kill the mayor, Jerry. Excuse me. However, through this meeting, an unfortunate set of circumstances leads Mabel to killing the queen bee, which the son gets distraught, and the rest of the animals are like, oh, we gotta handle this. So they begin chasing both of them down, both Mabel and the king of the mammals, in this universe anyway. So, when they make their deal of distance to have some time to breathe, she feels very upset, Mabel does, being that she feels like she was unable to make a difference. Small voice, unable to make a difference. Trust me, girl, I know how that is on YouTube. It is quite irritating, and she has that little bit of rage that flares up in her throughout her animation. So yes, she then gets to the humans, in particular Jerry, and uses a phone to commune with Jerry using text-to-speech to essentially commune that way. However, the other animals are not so keen on just simple communication. They're taking the more crazy approach by having a bunch of birds lift up a shark from the water to chase their vehicle. Again, this movie gets a bit nuts. Then she proceeds to take the comms device, which has allowed, thus far, the scientist there to commune with her specifically, and puts it in him, Jerry. And thus, he now believes this is all a dream. He had quite the arc there to get to that conclusion, but yeah, you can arc pretty fast when fast things are happening. I think that's exceptional. Anyway, she threatens him, in a sense. But unfortunately, the king finds out eventually that she is indeed a robot in a fake body. As she gets shunted out eventually, inevitably, into her human body once more. However, things get even more nuts as the animals have figured out a way to do the reverse and create a human robot. Jesus Christ, this movie has some weird stuff going on. And I'm kind of digging it, to be honest, again. So, now we have a Jerry robot going around. And is going to kill a bunch of humans. So they gotta put a stop to that. And so she, now as a human, once more, Abel, has to confront him on the Jerry robot, / one of the animals in there. And it's, of course, that butterfly that that bug that turned into a butterfly from earlier. And so, she confronts the Jerry robot up until a device and takes off the face, so it's just the robotic skeletal thing, so it can't unlock the phone to unlock the device that would threaten these people with the reverse noise. And so, when the scaffolding falls, a fire begins to spread, because of course that's not the end of the movie. And so the humans flee on one side, and we have a bunch of firefighters trying to prevent this forest fire from spreading. And on the other side, where Mabel is, with all her other animal friends and allies, are trying to break the dam so that the water from that side can get to the forest fire. And eventually they reuse the shark. The other animals come in to help once more, after all of that other nonsense. And so, the water spreads and the area is cleared. Mabel confronts Jerry after the fact. And, some time passes, and then Jerry gets his crew back, and he says, pick it up, we're, gonna clean up the mess we have made. And she's a bit shocked that he has changed his attitude, because, boy, that doesn't sound like any politician I've ever heard about in my lifetime. A politician that actually changes his stance on a thing? My God. An actual execution of a city, like an environmental thing in this circumstance, but I digress in saying I don't think that's like the craziest leap I think this entire movie makes, quite frankly, considering. But the Hopper project is shut down. But again, we see what the doctors are hyping up next. and we see the dog collar, which is, the use of being able to use that same tech to commune with dogs, which is why I suggested earlier that I feel like this is like a secret prequel to the movie Up, where you get the dogs talking, but they have that basic communication of, like, squirrel. Because of course. But, to wrap us up, Mabel returns to the forest to the king and hands him the phone, and, he was using it earlier in the movie, so we rewrap that joke back into the conclusion where the Beaver King is tapping on the phone beaver icons and of the such, and so on and so forth, and that's just how the movie ends. So yeah, I think this movie, at least when I was initially seeing it, the trailers were propping this up to be a more comical movie. And don't get me wrong, there are definitely comical bits, but it also does feel like it has that sort of Disney Pixar, juice, as it were. Though the juice definitely isn't as strong when they have, that typical Pixar emotional moment. I'm pretty sure most people would argue that Pixar is notorious for doing that in close to around the third act. The third act low point is usually when Pixar has that emotional moment in its film. There is a moment or two like that in this movie, but I don't feel like it quite reaches that apex of, like, heartbreak emotion. It gets close, don't get me wrong, and I think there is a moment, like I said, but just not quite as strong. Again. But yeah, it was refreshing to, again, just see Disney Pixar actually working on something new. And I don't know, I felt like this was a pretty solid movie, actually. This proves that, when they aren't shunting remakes and reboots and live action adaptations, Disney can probably, slash Pixar in this case, can still provide. But again, I feel like certain other reviewers are so high set on just focusing on when Disney does do those things. And don't get me wrong, I do want to point out, Disney is not the perfect company by any means. I have criticized Disney plenty on my own right. Hell, in one of my previous videos, and I've mentioned this more than once, I've mentioned how they're horrible at representation of the true diverse equality. Disney's dog shit at that. They have, again, just to remind people, they canceled the Owl House because of a bisexual character. Let's not pretend that that's not what happened. That's explicitly what happened with nice and coded language. Let's not mince words here. That is explicitly what happened. Owl House got wrecked because they had a young bisexual main character. That's it. Anyway, so while it would be cool to finally see Disney break out of that, I don't think it ever will. Again, that's why I am more affixed on, hoping that indie projects can pick up the slack on that end. But as far as this movie is concerned, it's fine. Surprisingly so, actually. I'd probably argue it is a little bit better than that one dinosaur movie that I was referring to earlier. And I think it utilizes sort of like this zany, plot structure to its advantage of, like, you would think that the solution was that simple when, she does do the whole ripping the forest down, but by utilizing the antagonist properly, they were able to, essentially reutilize sort of these heightened bits that are really, like, on the high end of just, like, insanity ensuing and, humans breaking nature, which I've never understood that aspect of the people that care about nature. Is like, if you can help nature, then fucking help nature. It's like, fuck off, I hate the idea of just leave nature alone. That just sounds wrong. I don't know. Something about it has always sounded wrong to me, but maybe that's just a personal thing. Anyway, in terms of a score, I would give this movie a solid 7 out of 10. I think this is a solid movie. Not anything too crazy, not anything that I would say is a high recommend, but, if you haven't somehow checked it out yet, and if you want to, show that you want to see more original Disney/Pixar content, then check this one out, I guess. And yeah, that is my review of Hoppers. If you ended up enjoying it, then please feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Also, make sure to check out those links in the description when I head to my petition about small YouTubers, second to my PayPal, where you can help support me and my channel directly, and third to my Discord server. We join collab, shield, do that cool stuff for free, and until next time, everyone, bye-bye.